My name is Emily Hicks, and I'm a senior at Apex Friendship High School. In August, I will be attending the University of South Carolina, where I'm in the business school. I'm so excited to find my place on campus, try things that will help me step out of my comfort zone, and most importantly, go to football games. I'm kind of the biggest sports fan ever, so I'm not going to act like South Carolina playing Alabama and Clemson at home next year didn't sway my decision. As my final weeks as a regular attendee at this church draw to a close, I can't help but to reflect on the ministries I've been a part of and each friendship I've made along the way. I met my best friend Anna in children's choir, and our friendship developed even more when we spent a little more time talking than we ever did singing during youth choir. I've been a part of the handbell choir since elementary school. I've taught Sunday school to second and third graders and participated in AOSP. I love the friends I've made during these experiences, but one of my favorite parts of my involvement has been a camp called Breakaway, which is a week-long conference event for middle and high schoolers at North Carolina Wesleyan College in Rocky Mount. For those of you who don't know, our church is a member of the North Carolina Conference of the United Methodist Church, and Breakaway is just a week-long event where kids from all those churches come together. And at Breakaway, you have a morning session and an afternoon session. You have your growth group in the morning, your living worship group in the afternoon. You have about 12 people in your growth group, and that's who you spend the most time with. You're able to develop relationships and go deeper. Last year, I met and became really close with Natalie Van Dyke, who would go on to become the conference youth president for this school year. Conference friendships are way cooler because you only see each other a couple times a year, but when you do see each other, it's like you're hanging out with someone you've known your whole life. Our second lesson comes from John chapter 13, verses 31 through 35, and you can find that in your Pew Bible on page 108. When he had gone out, Jesus said, "Now the Son of Man has been glorified in him. If God has been glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself, and he will glorify him at once. Little children, I am with you only a little longer. You will look for me, and as I said to the Jews, so now I say to you, where I am going, you cannot come. So I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you should love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another." I want to go a little more to give you some more context. Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, where are you going?" Jesus answered, "Where I am going, you cannot follow me now, but you will follow afterward." Peter said to him, "Lord, why can't I follow you now? I will lay down my life for you." Jesus answered, "Will you lay down your life for me? Very truly, I tell you, before the cock crows, you will have denied me 3 times. I'm involved in these things like I've mentioned, and I enjoy all of them, but I still find myself wondering, what's the real reason I'm spending 8 hours at church on a given Sunday when all of my friends are at home cramming in homework for Monday morning? I've seen my small group at youth become just 3 or 4 girls on any given week as a result of this question. I know I've struggled with the idea of, are we doing things because we want to do them or because we feel like we have to in order to be the perfect Christian? But I know that's something that everyone struggles with. We have a belief that if we follow certain steps and do X, Y, and Z, then we are on the path to being a perfect Christian and everything will happen according to our plan because we are doing what we think God wants us to do. Many of you might have witnessed this firsthand, whether you yourself have been through the college application process or if you just watched along someone you know. It's a very high-stress time. I know for myself, I was taking the same workload I had junior year, maybe even more, but then when you add the whole college application on top of it, you have to write all the essays, relive all of your high school career, the highs and lows that come with that, just so you can write out everything you've done and sound like the ideal candidate for each college. You do all of this work to make yourself sound the best you can, all just to get that one, "We regret to inform you" notification from the college you've dreamed of going to for as long as you can remember. That's all you read because it hurts too much to keep going, and you know that if you keep reading, it will make you feel worse than you already do. Honestly, I'm just stereotyping a rejection letter here because I didn't want to go back and read what mine said. I had set myself up to think that this was going to happen so that maybe it would hurt a little less, but it didn't really work like that. It's a weird feeling. You've dreamed of this day and getting that acceptance letter your whole life, and then one day it's here. You wake up the next day and the waiting is over. You wonder why all the hard work you've put in over the last 4 years all seems like a waste now. You go on social media and see your friends overjoyed to be going to this school, so you put on your best face and act happy for them, but inside it's killing you. You have people saying that maybe if you would have tried harder like them and put in more effort like they had, then maybe you would have gotten in. But you know you did your best, so that's what hurts the most. And honestly, we've all been there. Whether you didn't get that promotion at work that you thought you deserved over a colleague, even when you were the more qualified candidate, or maybe your parents didn't buy you that one toy you thought you couldn't live without. Rejection is hard, especially when you have no one to turn to. You can't talk to your parents about getting rejected because the college application process is so different now, and they always remind you that whenever you have a question. You can't talk to your friends because they all got into their top choice schools and they wouldn't exactly know how you're feeling. No one ever posts about getting rejected. I mean, why would they, right? So here you are thinking you're the only person who didn't get in, not sure how to handle the news because no one has ever talked about this feeling. You feel like you're the only person who wasn't smart enough. So then what happens? You ask, why God? Why me? I've done so much and given so much of myself to you my whole life, and this is how I get repaid? About a week after I got my South Carolina acceptance in the mail, I still wasn't set on going there. I had said the whole process that South Carolina was one of the places I saw myself the most, but I was still a little unsure about all of it. My friend Natalie and I were planning to have lunch one teacher workday, and we covered a lot of ground during our time together. We talked about anything from boys to reminiscing, which you do a lot of senior year, to helping each other decide where we go to college. While that wasn't the intent of our conversation, that's ultimately what came out of it. This is exactly what I mean when I say conference friendships are different. I hadn't seen Natalie in 4 months, but it was just as if we had talked the day before. We both needed someone who wasn't biased and would just be someone who would sit there and listen and tell us what we needed to hear. And we both got exactly that. I think Natalie and I both felt like we would get into the one school we had in our mind and that we would automatically be at peace with going to that school. But that didn't really happen to either of us. We got into schools we knew we wanted to go to, but that still left us with the decision. The non-judgmental love of someone I had spent 8 total days with in my life was who I turned to. While not the most conventional form of mediation, it was what I needed the most. I remember sitting in my AP statistics class the next morning, not being able to focus on anything because all I could think about was where I was going to college. Honestly, I hadn't focused much in any of my classes since I got my South Carolina letter, but that's besides the point. During lunch that day, I called my parents and asked if we could go to Columbia that weekend just to make sure that that was where I saw myself, and I found exactly that while we were there. Looking back, I had all of these signs over the past year telling me that South Carolina was where I needed to be, but I was ignoring them for my own plans. While I may have been upset with what God was doing in my life at the time, I know now that he was doing exactly what I needed from him. Jesus told Peter that he would die for Peter, despite knowing that Peter would deny him 3 times before the next morning even came. And I think this is something we should all find peace in. God knows that while we may question his timing, he puts us in a hard situation he knows we can handle before we could even imagine that situation happening to us. As long as we do things out of love for others, our God, and ourselves, we are fulfilling our promise to God, and in return, he will lead us to a life of excitement and fulfillment in him. So I want you guys to go out and find someone to be a Natalie for, because someone out there really needs it.